Thank you everyone for coming. I'm Dr. Joseph Lee. I'm also a dad. My background is that I've been a psychiatrist and a therapist out here in the community for about 12 years. So about 9 years ago, because my son's 9, became a parent. And so becoming a parent actually sort of reoriented me to a lot of different things. If you've dealt with or interacting with a lot of teenagers, sometimes, unfortunately, this also seems like they think that you're idiots. They think that you don't know what you're doing. They think that the way that you do it is stupid. It comes from this place where there is a conviction inside of them that really believes, because I can do it better, right? And so if we can reinterpret that a little bit and kind of understand where that comes from. We actually lose about 50% of the neurons that we have throughout this stage in our life. We lose half of our neurons during adolescence. There is a very deliberate editing process. So why is that? Okay, so if you think about how a kid learns, again, they sponge up the world, just take everything in. This is an important process of editing, right? And I don't know how many of you have ever gotten to that point where basically your iPhone or your computer, your hard drive has gotten full. And you basically look through your pictures and you start deciding, well, I really don't need 14 pictures of this one scene. I can delete a lot of this because it's not useful anymore to me. So basically that's sort of the idea that your brain has some sort of software in the background that decides neurons that you haven't used in a long time, that you actually don't find useful, because if you did, you would have been using them. Those are the ones that go. Those are the ones that are pruned out. Now, the other thing that happens in the brain is that the neurons that remain, though, the ones that are still there, the ones that you use, there's a process where they get myelinated, which means that they kind of get insulated, which really means that they get to go a lot faster. There's this book, Alison Gopnik, she's a psychologist. This is the model that I like to kind of talk about. So keep this in mind, the gardener and the carpenter. So we're going to talk about this zone of proximal development. So this is a zone where, again, the kid's ability to do this is emerging. And so, in this stage, the adult is an engaged collaborator. But we want to think of it as a gardener, right? Why? Because the parenting model in the last couple of decades has turned into basically the parent as a project manager or a carpenter who takes all these raw materials and decides what they want to build, and they build up this kid into this model of what they want, right? So how is a gardener model different? Gardener model says, well, your kid has come into the world, and once they're born, now you realize that even though you really, really, really wanted an avocado tree, your kid is a tomato plant. And as much as you would like for your kid to be an avocado tree, there's nothing you can possibly do to make a tomato plant grow avocados. And so what do you do as a good gardener, though? If you are an avocado tree farmer, but now you got a tomato plant, what you do is you learn about tomato plants. And you figure out the needs of a tomato plant that are different than an avocado tree. Maybe stuff translates, right? They kind of all need sunshine, they all need water, they all need fertilizer, but you learn that there's different needs. And also, I like the gardening model is good because it really suggests this idea of development. You're going to do different things when it's a seed versus a little small plant, versus the times in the year when there's not bearing fruit versus when it is bearing fruit and when to harvest. And so it kind of is a good mental model to kind of think about how we ought to be as parents, right? This is the biological stuff that happens in adolescence. We all start in our childhood, then there's this middle phase called adolescence, and then there's this adulthood. Down on the bottom here, this is historically how society supported this developmental process. That for a while there, society absolutely supported the idea of childhood, that we let kids be kids, we took care of them, and then there was this middle phase where we understood and we helped prepare adolescents for their eventual adulthood. And at some point, society also provided the opportunities and the support so that they could successfully transition into this stage in their life where they could take care of themselves and take care of others, right? So historically, up until about 30 or 40 years ago, the biological changes that happened between birth and onset of puberty to about 24, 25 biologically was roughly supported by society, sort of saying between 0 grow and a certain age, okay, you get to be a kid, all right, but you came of a certain age in your teenage years, okay, you got to start thinking about the future. You're going to get some more responsibility here. We're going to help you around 18, give you some adult opportunities, but you'll be surrounded by adults who are going to mentor you or teach you at college or show you the ropes or teach you these things. And by 24 to 25, got enough support, enough hands-on experience with their adolescent minds, learning from experience, that they gained a certain sense of competency. And up until about 30, 40 years ago, so you hit 25 and you basically were in the middle of probably your career. You were probably married, you probably had kids, and you probably had been doing all of that for a couple of years. And so when you were ready to be an adult at 25, you were actually ready to be an adult. Let's revise the present and new model. Okay. So we said earlier that, okay, we still have childhood, but what do we say? We said 100 years ago, puberty didn't start till 16, right? And then now we have this number that keeps getting lower and lower. So childhood is shorter biologically, right? Which means that biologically adolescence is longer, right? So they got an earlier start where their brain says, look, you got to get ready to become an adult at 10 and a half. Weird, right? Okay. Still ends at 24, 25, and so your brain kind of goes into stable adult mode at 24, 25. All right, so that's biology. Okay, so childhood now, right? This is society now, culture. How do we support this? Okay, so kids come into the world, it's good, right? Okay, you get to be a baby. We're all right. We'll take care of you. And then somewhere around age 4, why can't you read? All right, okay, so we do all this stuff as kids, right? We help them, we help them, we help them. All right, and then at some point, adolescence does start. And if adulthood is the phase in life where people can take care of themselves responsibly with autonomy and competency, and not only could they do that, they have the capacity to successfully take care of others as well. Not only their own needs, but they can take care of others as well. Where does adolescence end in the society in which we live right now?
32, 31. 22.
Man, you guys are optimists. I think it looks like this.
They're not ready at all.
There will be no slides after this one where I give you the answers. This is what it is right now. And so the dilemma, the problem, and the challenge is that up until 30, 40 years ago, it aligned. That our society and our biology allowed for us to become self-sustaining, self-caring, other-caring adults by the time our brains became adults at 24, 25. What's happening these days is that that window closes at 24, 25, and those same kids are living at home. So they're being told that you are too needy, that you need too much attention, you need too much praise. College education is not as valuable as it once been, but everyone's supposed to go to college. One of the changes that we definitely know is 30, 40 years ago, there was like an 80% chance that you're going to get married to somebody who lived within 5 miles of where you grew up. These days, you're probably going to marry a stranger you met online. Back 30, 40 years ago, the relationship that you built romantically was somebody that you were familiar with. Maybe, right? Same neighborhood, same town, maybe went to school together, maybe it's older brother or sister of somebody you knew. And then when you kind of start dating, it's just taking a relationship you already kind of had to the next level, right? We talk about adolescence, when you become super peer-oriented, right? Historically, that worked, meaning you started making your friends in junior high, and you kept them through high school, and you kept them for the rest of your life. And so when your brain said, you got to find a tribe, because these are the people that you will share life with, you did. But what happens now? So you invested all these years in making friends in middle school and high school, but then you leave. And you make all these great friends in college, and then you leave. And then you go to work, and you got a job. But if your first job, you stay there longer than 1 to 3 years, something's wrong with you. You got to move. But those are where your friends are. But then you leave. And you can't date at work. It's frowned upon, right? So we have these biological drives that say make friends. That drive that starts in middle school used to work. It used to support you and used to make you form genuinely these important relationships that would support you for the rest of your lives. And these days we keep moving. Also the opportunities for people in their 20s to genuinely, even if you're hardworking, even if you're intentional, even if your parents supported you, the opportunities to make enough money to support yourself, start a family. The opportunities at 24, 25 are pretty small these days too, right? The positive factors in adolescence. Okay, so how do we do this? relationships matter. If we're looking at research in terms of who are the teens that do the best, the teens that still have good relationships, whether that's good relationships still with their parents, with their siblings, with their peers, mentors, coaches. The more positive, useful relationships they have in their lives, the better they do. Spirituality actually is one of the most studied things with the most positive results. People who study this, Lisa Miller is sort of the main person. She wrote a book called The Spiritual Child. She has a couple chapters very specifically in the teenage years. And I think this is the most impressive part, that in her research, she basically found that the biggest protective factor in your teenage years against depression, substance abuse, and risk-taking was whether or not you had an internal sense of a relationship with a higher being, more so than anything else.
Wow.
But we do live in a world where if you are emotionally competent, that you are socially competent, that you are a critical thinker, that you are self-motivated, that you have empathy, that those are the spaces in the world where people thrive these days. And so I think social emotional learning, if we can move that to the center, I think what happens is that all that other competency naturally follows, because the desire to be accomplished, the desire to be self-motivated, the desire to do well is there. So, learning to use the power of the adolescent mind can help us have a positive experience as it emerges during this period of, yes, intense change. When navigated well, these brain changes can lead to positive outcomes later on, holding on to the essential power of the teenage mind into later adolescence and beyond, into the adult years, can enable us to continue lifelong learning and recognize the important life-affirming sense of adventure, vitality, and courage that adolescence brings. Learning to use the power of the emerging adolescent mind well is as important for us as adolescents as it is for us adults. So this last picture, this is actually a process we're going through right now. So I think if we kind of really think about adolescence as this period of time of essentially remodeling, if you have a difficult remodeling experience, and we've all heard the horror stories, we all feel like it could be a disaster. However, right, with the right help and support, with the right people in your life, guiding you, right, the other version of this is maybe you get the house of your dreams.